Welcome to this edition of When the Biomass Hits the Wind Turbine, a discussion of sustainable living and what that means to you and me. I am Jay Warmke.
And today I'm Annie Warmke.
And tomorrow and the next day and the next day.
Yeah.
And okay, on today, just today, not tomorrow and the next day, we're going to talk about urban food forests, or the zoning board is going to love this. So that's my secondary title, because when and the reason that pops into my head is we've recently purchased an urban office building of sorts for Blue Rock Station for our solar business, and Annie has this glorious plan of turning the backyard into a food forest, and I'm just thinking, okay, that will be interesting to see how the neighbors and the powers that be in this urban environment are going to react to something different.
Have you told the neighbors? Because you have had the contact with the neighbors, because I'm the farmer. I'm not here. I'm still at Blue Rock Station.
All I can say is the woman who lived here a couple of owners ago had like an herb garden in the backyard, and all of our neighbors think that is something.
Jungle. They called it a jungle.
And it attracted rats and rodents, and oh my God, it was a mess. And and the people who owned the place tore it all up and put down a lawn, and thank God. So they're going to be talking about us. So
I hope so. I really hope so. And I'm not being facetious.
We need to put up a 10-foot bamboo fence.
Well,
baby.
That probably is true. And then we'll invite them in for a tour.
Said, good fences make good neighbors. Was that Walt Whitman, maybe, or Emerson, or Thoreau, or one of those guys?
I thought, you weren't the first to say that?
It must have been somebody. I'm going to say Emerson.
I don't know.
Sounds
I don't really
good.
care.
It's one of those three. So.
All right. So now that you've done the whole whatever.
And then it was Robert Frost.
Frost.
Probably.
Anyway, a poet, maybe. I personally think Mark Twain. But anyway.
No.
So I just want to say that I am of the opinion that if we can grow food, if we can grow trees, if we can grow anything, anywhere, we should be doing it, because it mitigates heat, it mitigates cold, it mitigates extreme weather. And that's the thing. We need to be thinking like this, even on a small little piece, 70 by 30, which is what our backyard is in this building. It has the ability to mitigate temperature.
So on a 70 by 30 plot, I'm not anticipating that will grow, enough to feed a family of 4.
We're only 2 people.
I know. You're just saying it's not a total thing. It's not a homestead.
But there's no. Okay, first of all, let me say that one of the things that frustrates me to no end is people get off on this extreme. We got to grow our own food and we're going to do blah, 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 blah. And it's like, look, we are human beings who live as a tribe. We don't like that, but it's the way it is. So I don't think it's sustainable to say, I'm going to grow everything myself, because I want to support my community. And I also want to support diversity, because that is protection. But let me say something about the food forest itself.
She's swatting invisible flies with her hands.
I am only trying to demonstrate that you can grow food. Right. And it's delicious and it's good. And maybe the rats did come because some of the neighbors have really trashy areas that would support rat and mice cultures and possum cultures and coon cultures.
They got to eat.
They do. And they're not stupid. They're going to come over where the really best food is. So, I mean, mice never eat the crappy plastic things. They eat the really delicious stuff. Anyway, So what I want to talk about today is what is possible. Right. So let's say you have a really small yard and you think, I'd like to grow food, but in thinking about it in a traditional way and not in a food forest garden way, you're thinking only this one little space of real estate.
Have some green beans and some tomatoes.
Yeah. And those things are important because they do fixate nitrogen into the soil, which we need for plants to produce fruits and vegetables and flowers. But what we're really looking at is saying, how can we create a perennial, meaning the plants are there year after year. They aren't just there for one season, a perennial garden that utilizes as much real estate as possible. So I wouldn't come to a 70 by 30 lot and say, I'm going to grow a pecan tree, because at some point I'll have way too much shade and I won't be able
It
to
might
plant.
take up the whole lot.
Well, more than that, and the neighbors will really get PO'd about that.
Mhm.
So, but I might say I'm going to grow dwarf fruit trees, maybe a mulberry tree that's going to grow higher than those dwarf fruit trees. Maybe I can grow 5 or 6 fruit trees and have 2 of each kind, like pears. We're going to plant pears, peaches, and plums. And then maybe I want to plant some Jerusalem artichokes because they get pretty tall.
Well, a couple of weeks ago, we talked about, food forests in general, but what we're really drilling down here is can you do this? Must you do this in an urban, or, as I was teasing you earlier, the suburban? Because when I think of urban, I think of like the mean streets of New York City, and you don't have a 70 by 30 necessarily a plot available to you to grow anything. I
Well,
mean, it's
part
it's
of
basically, the studies show about what, up as much as 50% of the city's surface is concrete, is parking lots, roads, alleys, buildings. So okay, so you got 50%, and you're saying
Well, yeah,
let's
but then
use
you
as
got
much of that as we
50%.
can.
But the other 50% is not necessarily that. It could be roofs and things like that.
Well, you could do some living roofs. So I guess what we keep coming back to here is, a lot of people like to poo-poo these ideas, saying, yeah, it's not going to solve the problem. So let's let the perfect be the enemy of the good. But I think what we're kind of working towards is, in a world that has scarce resources, we need to dual purpose pretty much
More than dual
everything.
purpose, but it's not just scarce resources. It is climate extreme weather events,
Yeah.
incredible fungus, incredible mold, incredible
Yeah.
disease, incredible insects.
So you're saying, okay, food forests aren't going to solve all those problems.
No, but
they're going
they
to
can
make it a
mitigate.
little better.
Well, mitigation is where we
Yeah.
are, and they are
Yeah.
capable of that, even on a very small plot of land. And there are forest food gardens across the United States. And in so many places, it's really unbelievable. And if you visit communityfoodforest.com, there's a map there, and it's not up to date map, but it definitely shows that even here in Ohio, there's a one in Akron, there's in Pennsylvania, which is near here. Pittsburgh has one, and they're owned by different people.
And these are in urban settings.
Yeah, they are. But the reason that I'm saying urban food forest is because what agriculture likes to call, or herbalists like to call, urban landscaping. But we're not doing landscaping. We are doing forest gardening.
It's not a bunch of topiaries with petunias.
No, because right? we want to, what we basically want to do is catch and store energy, and then explore what that energy will create, which is food.
But harvestable energy.
Yeah, that's right. And so that harvest, the things that we're harvesting could be decorations that we sell at a farmer's market, or to industry, like florists and people like that, or hobby people who use it for hobby and making things. But so it's not just about food, but what it is about is saying we're going to create an environment which the indigenous people, our ancestors, knew how to do this. And we really need to fall back on some of the ways that they created ways to eat, because if we don't, and we keep doing this thing where we act like we're going to be able to feed everybody in a healthy way, it ain't going to happen. And I do agree that a lot of the problem is we do have plenty of food, but it's how it's distributed. And so there we are.
Yeah. So when you're in when you're in these arguments, when you're in these debates with people, and they say,
I'm not debating with anybody about
okay,
this.
so
Maybe
you just
do.
say, talk to the hand.
No, I don't want to
face
debate
don't
it.
want to know.
I'm too
that kind of
excited
thing.
about the ideas of it, and also the prospects Because, so for example,
All right. Well, let me finish my thought there.
all
So,
right, I'm
so
not
you're
debating.
again just saying, listen, I don't want to pretend that this is going to solve all of the world's problems. What
No,
I'm saying is that this is one way to make them a little bit less.
right,
That
but also
it
for people to
helps.
have some control in their own environment where they can make the area around their home cooler or their business cooler or warmer,
Sure.
just by having plants planted the area as a forest instead of um, with a little bush here and a little bush there, and it provides a little bit of shade for the wall.
Well, I
So,
wonder, we talk about this in the sort of the broader picture of food forests, where you say, all right, we've created a food forest, and one of the things about food forests is that it's not row cropping. You've got crops randomly scattered over an area, and that's healthier for the crop. It's healthier for the environment. You've got multi layers going on. We're talking about very small plots within a food forest in an urban environment, and there's just, it's obviously limited what you can do there. But could you look at the entire urban environment as a food forest, and
well,
then
yeah.
look at each of these, these many little tiny things are the random scatterings
Well,
of
that's what we
everything
ought to be
else?
doing, and saying,
Yeah.
all right, let's have a tree census that tells us where are the food producing trees, where are the trees we could use for decoration, where are the trees that we should be timbering to get rid of so we can replace them with trees that are going to benefit that block or that neighborhood. But we're not looking at it like that.
But that's going to require buy-in by the powers that be, and in some progressive areas that may be very, very, top of the agenda kind of stuff, and they'll all, think that's great. But in a lot of the places we've lived, you know
Yeah,
getting
but
them
that's
to
the
not put
United
you in
States.
jail for not having a lawn
Well,
is
we've
going to
had
be
people
tough.
actually burn our tree
Oh yeah,
I
yeah,
got for
yeah.
my birthday one
Yeah,
year.
I know I planted the guy, and the next door neighbor came out and goes, when that grows up, that's going to drop leaves on my
It
land.
was a
And I
baby.
was like, well, okay, you're like 60 and you'll be dead because
Oh,
this poor little tree's not going to grow up
well,
for
he
30
fixed it
years.
because
Yeah, he dumped
he burned it
kerosene,
up
and
with
yeah.
something the next
So there are
day.
hateful people everywhere, but how do you get your local government? I mean, how do we begin to educate them? I'm sure they're all listening to this, but
Okay, I'm not concerned about that right
all
now.
right, one step
But
at a
what I
time.
do want to point out that in other countries, in other continents, like in Africa, um, other little towns, little burgs that are in other places besides North America, they are looking at it as community. Lots of women's groups in some of these tiny places, little villages in other countries, have organized around this because they want to create a food forest, and they see the value. But it also isn't just tiny places. The first time I read about food forests was about a landowner in England, a gentried landowner. They owned 1,000 acres, and they were going to go belly up, bankrupt. And they had crops, they had livestock, they had a village of people, and they decided that what they were going to do was they were going to just build a fence around their entire farm area of this 1,000 acres, and they were going to let it go back to what it was. And they ran in pigs, chickens, cattle. What else would there
Well, you're
be?
not going to do
Sheep.
that in
All
New
right, but just
York,
wait.
right?
And what happened was these are all forest animals too. They aren't animals that really are pasture animals. That's what we've done to them. And the land started to change dramatically, really dramatically, to the point where they had new plants, they had new beneficial insects, they had less problem with bad insects. It was a game changer, and they were able to sell products. Their meat was more highly sought, and they actually turned the place around. And that was the first time I had thought about really how to use the real estate that exists versus what I've done in the past.
All right. Well, let me just remind everybody you're listening to When the Biomass Hits the Wind Turbine with Jan and Warmke, reminding you it is indeed the end of the world as we know it.
And thank God.
And thank God. So, the end of the world as we know it also includes how we do gardening
Well, how we
we've
use the land.
how we're yeah, we're how we're using the land. And traditionally, well, it's been a struggle in urban settings even in recent years to let people have, gardens,
Yeah, they're
just
outlawed in
what.
especially your front
Yeah,
yard
you
in a
can't
lot
do
of
it in the
places.
front yard because that's ugly. Well, who decides that's ugly? But those are the issues. Like, you're not allowed to hang up a clothesline because that's ugly. And but that guy's, Mustang on blocks is fine. I mean, it's always very.
All right, but
If nobody's
before,
making money off of it, then it's illegal.
well, maybe I don't know. I don't want to argue any of that
I
because to
do.
me it's
I feel like
BS
it. Yeah,
because
let's go
it's
down. Let's
all
storm
right. So I want to talk about what are the
storm
steps.
City Hall.
No, I don't care. I'm interested in talking more about what are the steps. There are 10
All
steps
right, 10
to
steps. There are
10
always
steps.
10 steps. How
I
come
don't know.
these are the 9.5
All right,
steps?
you want me to talk for 14 minutes, so I've got 10 steps. So get
Okay.
over it, bud. Anyway, so the first step is deciding what your site is like and what your growing zone is. So you might want to grow pineapples, but you're in the wrong zone for doing that. But then also, what about the
Don't
zoning?
you repress me.
Not I'm going to repress you for sure. Um, you're being ornery today. Stop it. So zoning, not just the zone, the growing zone you're in, but what does the zoning say about what you want to do? And you're just bringing that up about you can't grow this or you can't grow that.
Mhm.
And then creating a plan. So you really, really need a plan, whether that is bringing in somebody that knows more than you. But everything in that site must have a purpose. And the right site will be able to do that for you. You may have to, cut down, like we're going to need to cut down some trees that are really in, whoever let those trees grow up through an existing fence did not care about trees. So they got to come out now, and they would have had to come out whether we're going to make a food forest or not. The second step is create a system because all systems in a food forest garden work together. They help each other to create one unit and to work with nature. And remember, I said what we're trying to do is to catch and store energy. And so we've got to have a system that will do that. So we can't have all trees that are same height, and we don't want to start with. We really don't want to start with trees that are in a pot. We want to start with what they call bare root, so that they're able to catch on right away to where we are. They're not root bound or
Go
anything.
right into my sewer line.
That's right. And
Right.
we want to use locally grown if we can, because they'll be that seedling or that sapling will be attuned to that environment, the temperature changes and everything. The third step is we want to learn from the natural forest. So we're trying to imitate the principles of the natural forest, and it's your best teacher. Go visit some forests in your area, or if you have forest land, go sit there, look at how everything is growing, how it's dying, how it's feeding things, what are the insect issues, what's the shade issue, what's the
But
fertility.
not every forest is healthy,
No, but
you
I
know.
don't care. You want to go, every forest has its own system.
Right.
And you want to see how is that system in my region working. So yeah, we see a lot of dead trees where we are.
Oh, I don't mean I mean, there's invasives
It's
coming
not,
in.
yeah. So we
There's
want to see,
things
what
like
that
that.
is.
All
What are
right.
the invasives for my region? What are the things that do well? For example, we know with climate change that sugar maples are not going to survive. They're going to have to move further north. So, what do those sugar maples look like now? So also we want to learn what are those 7 layers of a forest and how do we adapt those to where we want to be, how the size and the plan for that lot that we're going to plant in an urban area. And those 7 layers can be any amount of creativity. It just has to come back every year, except we might want to use one of the layers to grow annual vegetables like cucumbers, and depending on the region you're in, or tomatoes or whatever. So the the fifth step is we want to create a forest floor. So we want a floor that emulates the forest, and that's very different than if you go out and you look at your garden or a pasture. We want to have wood mulch because that forest floor would be composed of leaf matter and rotting bark and twigs and whatever else. And that forest floor retains moisture and it breaks down the material more easily and quickly because of that fungus in the soil. So we need that to happen.
Could you use like the leaf matter that's gathered in most cities? Like,
Well, you want to see
is
where
that
it's
gonna?
coming from,
Yeah,
because
because
if
that
you're
can be
bringing it
pretty
from
icky.
a place where everybody um, sprays their lawn, then you just bring this big toxic thing. It's true that dilution is the solution to toxin, but you don't have a very big space to be dealing with that. And if you bring in like lots and lots and lots of leaf matter and it's all been sprayed, then that is not going to be a healthy thing for it's going to be horrible for the fungus that you need to materialize out of this the
Yeah, it
wood mulch.
reminds me like the time we brought in a bunch of horse manure from the county fair, and turns out they had like so much wormer and everything that we
It
couldn't
had
have.
needles and oil
Needles, oil
filters, and so we
filters.
abandoned the entire thing, which turned out to be a blessing, but it didn't feel so such at the time. So, all right. So, step 6 is local research and variety selection. So, I think it's really important, if you haven't done any of this before, and certainly if you haven't been a gardener, you need to find a mentor. And there are lots of, if you go to this communityfoodforest.com, you'll see there are food forests in your area, and lots of them are set up to provide education and information. And you also want to know what are the diseases that you've got to fight, and what plants are resistant to that. So some varieties are disease resistant, and you really want to deal with that. There are a couple of guys on YouTube that are pretty cool around urban food forests, and one is a guy called Hugh Richards, and his spells his name Huw Richards, and then James Prigioni, Prigioni. I apologize for my pronunciation, but they are both really cool dudes who
Cool dude.
the
That's
Richards
what I want to be
the
known
Richards
as.
guy, I think he's in like Australia, New Zealand, and so he's in a different
So by
environment.
definition, a cool dude.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, so YouTube's a good resource, but these guys really know what they're doing, and they James has created food forests from nothing, and he's showing you different levels, different years of his food forest.
Are these things, when you've seen them, and obviously you've looked at them online, do they look like an urban jungle, or do they look attractive? I mean, could somebody look at this and go, I mean, obviously somebody's going to look at it and say it's beautiful, and somebody's going to look at it and say it's hideous. But is this something that most people are going to just say, yeah, that's attractive,
Well, it
in an
depends on
urban
your
environment?
definition of attractive, but most people love forests.
Yeah, but does it look like just some overgrown lot somewhere?
I don't think so.
I mean,
mean,
it's
the ones,
tended. It looks tended.
well, it is managed because you're keeping this mulch in place because you don't want weeds and you don't want to have bad pests and things like that.
Sure.
So
So it's not plant
if you're
and ignore.
a person who thinks forests are beautiful, you will love
well,
food
most
forests.
people love long walks on the beach, but they don't actually do it. They
No,
say they
that's
do.
right.
And they
if
say, I love walks in the forest. They're not really. They love drinking
Well, but
Budweiser on the
there's
couch.
a majority of people who at least fantasize that
All right.
forests are beautiful.
So once again, we have to get into this when we talk about reimagining the world.
we got to change.
We got to
how we
actually
imagine
change.
It.
I mean,
Right.
we
can't just keep going. It's got to be the same old thing, because the same old thing is going to give you the same
it's
results.
like saying I want to go on a diet, but I don't want to change what I eat.
That's you. That's absolutely you.
Hey,
you're a lost cause
there
for
you
food
go.
forest.
There
Then
you go.
I don't think so.
No, I could see that. It's just that I've got to manage my conditioning.
Okay, let's move on, because that's a whole.
I'm learning something here. I'm having an epiphany.
You mean about going on a diet, or
no? Okay, back to forests.
I thought so. Anyway, so I did mention before that you should always buy bare root trees, because they're going to adjust and do what you need. I believe it's really good to plant things pretty tightly together. So let's say you plant 3 peach trees, and in 2 years, 2 of them are dead. So you got a peach tree. If you don't do that, you may end up with not having ever have any peaches.
What if they all survive?
Well, then you yank out the ones that are not.
I'm just thinking as you're
healthy.
saying this, maybe this was my parents' philosophy of children.
Why they had so many?
7 of them, because they may not all
But they
make
kept
it.
up with boys. That's the problem.
Yeah, well, that's the thing.
All right. So that brings us to step number 9, which is a kind of persistence and a belief that whatever you do, it's going to be what you want it to be. So it's not going to happen overnight. You're not going to walk out one morning and it's all going to be beautiful. And you've got to observe, and the step number 10 is observe and refine and deal with whatever's going on in your forest. And this is just gardening. You know, every gardener goes, that doesn't belong there anymore. I got to move it over here, or that doesn't work, or that's going to die. Let's get it out of here before it attracts more bad pests.
Sure, that's getting too tall. That's too
well,
big.
Yeah, we need to whack it back, or we need to give up on it.
Well, I guess that brings up the point that this is by definition a fairly small space. So it is manageable, right?
Well, you would think so, but some people can't even manage,
the top of their desk.
I know. Oh, don't bring that up. That's as bad as the diet thing. So anyway, I think what we are really talking about here is we've got to reimagine gardens, and we've got to reimagine how we use space in urban areas, because we're wasting all of this really amazing space. And there are a lot of people out there that would like to do this kind of thing. And I'm just really encourage people to go to this community food forest site and check out what's out there, because it's a great opportunity. So for example, let's say you say, I don't have very much money to buy plant material, but you can join the Arbor Day Foundation for $50, which is a lot of money, but I bet you spend that much twice visit to McDonald's, or maybe not. Maybe you spend it once.
This is the hypothetical you, right?
Yeah, we don't go to McDonald's. But I'm just saying, a lot of people go to McDonald's. And so if you can spend $50 at McDonald's, you can spend $50. But the Arbor Day Foundation is going to give you 10 plants, 10 bare root trees to plant. So let's say you don't want to plant those trees. They have fruit trees, really nice bare root fruit trees for $20 a piece. And so you can start a food forest with, especially if you knew there's a peach tree next door, an apple tree or whatever, you can utilize those trees to help to pollinate the tree that you're going to plant. So I don't think it's a good excuse to say, I don't have enough money, or I don't have enough knowledge, because it's out there.
Okay, well, you have been listening to When the Biomass Hits the Wind Turbine with Jay and Annie Warmke. We want to thank our Emmy Award-winning producer, Adam Rich. I didn't even tease him today.
I know it.
And we want to thank you for spending just a little bit of time with us. And as your grandmother hopefully told you, the secret to a happy and sustainable life is...
play nice with others, Jay. Clean up your own mess and eat your veggies.
Till next time. Bye-bye.
See the morning glory blossom in the night. Know the stars are dancing in the twilight. Soon we'll be together. All will be revealed. Mother Earth will sing, and the children will be healed.
You can find more information on living sustainably in our unsustainable world at bluerockstation.com.